Welcome to Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 239. And to be honest, I have no idea what we're going to talk about. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live call-in show for computer repair techs. We answer your questions on running and operating your computer repair business. Call-in number is 1-888-697-0162. The Computer Repair Podcast is brought to you by Ninja, the simple-to-use remote monitoring and management solution. Try it free at info.ninjamsp.com/Podnutz. Let me introduce the co-host. We have John Dubinsky from the Maven Group. How you doing, John?
Locked and loaded. Best show ever, Jeff.
Awesome, man. Sounds like it's just you and me.
Just you and me. I promise that'll be the only singing I do this whole show. Okay.
All right. So just a little preface. We were going to talk about templates this week, but the person that actually brought the topic, which is Brad Torrey from TTCS computerservices.com. So you can send an email over there. He's not here. So a couple last minute things, not a big deal. So John and I decided, what are we going to talk about? Well, we're just going to go off the cuff. But in staying on the order of what we normally do, John, would you like to give the audience a tip or story that they could learn from?
I think I got 3 good tips this week to throw at our audience. The first one is I had a customer that had Office 365, the full Office suite, and then Project, also through Office 365. So I get a call from him and 2 different laptops, and it all started happening about, I don't know, let's say within a week of each other. So I think after a Windows update of some sort. That's the only thing that I can pin it on. But all of a sudden, all the Office products work perfectly except for Project, which crashes on startup. So I uninstall Office, I uninstall Project, I go to the web page, I get the Office 365 uninstall utility, do a clean install, I crawl through the registry, I delete all the directories, blah, blah, blah. Reinstall Office, reinstall Project, exact same thing happens. So I do it all again, and this time I install Project first and then Office, and everything works just fine. So there's my little tip. Project 365 first, then Office 365 if you have this problem.
Interesting.
I don't know why. I just stumbled upon that in a forum, and it worked. Now, on one of the laptops, which was a Dell Precision, that has this weird NVIDIA video card that basically says, do you want me to use the built-in NVIDIA or do you want me to use the built-in Intel in this machine? Because it has both graphics processors, an Intel processor and an NVIDIA processor. So after the creators update, Project would now start, but like the activation window would come up, the square would appear, but it would be blank. So I couldn't click on, okay, let's activate or do anything. So I had to go into the NVIDIA video parameters, turn those down, and set Project to use the Intel video card. So once I told the laptop to use the Intel card for the Microsoft Project, everything was good there too. So 2 tips in there for Office 365. The next tip I have is I have a client that does a monthly archival backup, and I run it this is one of many backups they do, and they're probably one of my favorites because they're very anal about their backup, but we do a manual monthly archival backup of all of their entire data onto 2 separate USB drives. So every month we have these 2 drives, they come into the office, we do the backup, and then after a period of time, obviously the drives fill up, and it goes pretty quick because they have a lot of data. So now we have come to the point where we have about 15 2 terabyte Western Digital external USB drives that have all this archive data for the past couple of years. And the lady that actually stores these takes these to the bank and puts them inside of a safe deposit box. Said, you know, they're just kind of in there bouncing around. I mean, they don't move or anything, but it kind of makes me uncomfortable. So I did a little looking around, and I found Pro Storage at getprostorage.com. This might be a little bit of an overkill, and I'll put an Amazon link in the show notes too. But what they are is basically foam slots in storage containers to put drives in.
Oh, nice.
So, you know, just nice and neat. If you are going to move drives around, I thought that was a pretty interesting product, and they're not that expensive. So if you're going to back up the data, you might as well protect it in your archive anyway. So if you're going to take the time to do that. And my last little tip is I shared this on Podnutz Pro too, but we just had a nice big storm here over this past weekend, knocked a ton of power out for a lot of my clients and killed Comcast for a lot of my clients. But the cool thing is our energy provider, which is Consumers Energy. I don't know if they're on your side of the state or not.
Yes, they are.
But you can go to consumersenergy.com/outage map, and you can see where the outages are. So I can see that if one of my clients are down visually, put it in their address or just via the map. But the really cool thing is you can set up notifications so that if the power is down for a particular address, you can get a notification.
Nice.
So I'll put those links in there, but check your power provider and they might have something like that. And I see Brad's here.
Hey, Brad. How you doing?
Good. I got a funny story.
We're doing tips. Don't change the.
Yeah, we're doing tips right now. But here's the thing. At first, I was going to name the show, and then when you weren't here, we didn't name the show. But then I saw your email, so I was like, all right, we'll be able to carry on. So very good. I'll tell you what. If you're ready, do you have a tip or story that we could learn from?
Yes, and I have an additional tip because of my tardiness just now. Don't prank yourself. So I'm sitting down and I was running a little late. It's been a little crazy morning, and I'm trying to I've got a routine before the podcast recording. I always reboot my computer because it's probably been a month since I've rebooted my computer, and that kind of stuff. And I sit down, I get everything all cleaned up. I'm like, oh my God, why do I have so many Chrome tabs open? My life is a mess. And then I reboot my computer, and then I look at it and I go, where's my camera? Like, where is the camera that I use for the podcast? Where is it? It never moves. It's like permanently fixed to my monitor array. And I'm looking around like, what did I do? Like, did someone come in here? What? Nobody ever comes into my office. Like, this is insane. So I don't remember what I was working on, but that's right. I was doing something for a Mercedes mechanic, and I was working on an actual Mercedes, the interface that Mercedes mechanics use to work on the computer of the car. So these are very specialized little Windows embedded devices with no screen. You wouldn't even know it was a Windows device unless you took it apart against all recommendations and looked at the hard drive. Anyway, but it was working on something, and I visually had to look at the screen of the device, and I didn't want to stay in my office. So I set up my camera as a remote streaming thing so that I could kind of like check in on it without having to go into my office. Anyway, I forgot about that because that was almost a month ago, and haven't used my camera since. And I was like, it was clipped over to like a lamp over here. And long story short, put your stuff back together when you're done, and not wait until you're 5 minutes late for a podcast to realize that your camera's missing.
Whoops.
The other more maybe in business related kind of advice, stick to your guns. So by that I mean, but also be nice. So I have a customer that as a policy, I just don't front hardware. You pay for the hardware, I buy it, then I do the work, and then I charge you for the labor. Usually is how it works out. But there was a camera that a customer wanted, and these surveillance cameras that I like are sometimes stock, a little difficult to source at a reliable price. I found that Amazon's the best place to get them, even though, because it's Hike Vision. If anyone knows, they're good. They're a good camera system, but sometimes they're not available. Sometimes they're not available on Prime, whatever. I saw that they were on a good price at a good, and available. So I ordered one for a customer that I knew wanted one, even though she hadn't paid the hardware deposit up front. And then they caught up on some invoices, but they deliberately didn't pay the camera invoice, even though I told them that I'd already bought it against all policies and things. I already bought this camera for you, so here's the invoice, please pay it. And they didn't pay it because they're like, hey, well, we bought these computers that our office needs, and we want you to install them, and we'll pay the labor for that, but we're managing our cash flow, so we didn't pay the camera invoice. I said, no, it's cool. It's cool. But I did tell you that I already bought that on your request and that I don't normally do that. I kind of broke my own rules to do that for you so that when you were ready, it would be faster. The service, like I'm here to do things for you that are good. And she didn't. And then I said, oh, that's fine. But I'm going to sell that camera to somebody else because whether or not I actually have a customer for it or not, I wanted her to know that I'm like, hey, that's money I need. So I'm going to sell that camera. And then she's like, oh, no, we'll pay that invoice. No problem.
Nice.
So it was kind of a way to say like, hey, that wasn't cool what you did, but without saying those words. Like I was saying, well, hey, I understand completely. Like cash flow is hard for everybody, including me, which is why I don't usually buy cameras for people that don't pay for them. So I'm going to sell it to somebody because I need that money. And then she was like, oh, hey. And then it's funny how people can always come up with the cash if you say it right, you know?
Exactly. Wow. Well, that's a good tip. And going against your own policy sometimes is probably not the best thing. So
also a good tip. Don't break your rules.
That's
you have rules for a reason.
I set the rules and this is the way it is.
Yep.
When you do break them, it ends up just causing you more trouble, even though you're trying to do a good thing.
Yeah, seriously.
It's the nice guy syndrome or nice gal syndrome or whatever. It's being nice. Like overly nice and wanting to help people out. And again, it's not, we should get paid for what we do, but it's not always about the money. It's about doing a good job, taking care of the customer, even if they don't know they're being taken care of well. It's what we do.
Exactly. Well said.
So anyways, I've got a couple things. I don't take a whole lot of credit cards, but when I do, my Square reader comes out. So I ran into a situation. I've had this happen twice over the last couple weeks, week and a half. A couple customers come in, they want to pay by credit card, no problem. That's why I have Square for that particular service. Yeah, it cost me a little bit, but so what? So I pull out Square reader, plug it in my phone just like I normally do, go to swipe the card, nothing. Oh, notice there's a chip on the card. And I'm thinking in my head, every store that I go to, they will not let me swipe my card anymore because it has a chip. I got to stick it in, which does not make me happy because I got to wait there. I said, I'm sick and tired of this machine telling me what to do. Don't take it out. Not yet. Hold on. Put in your PIN code. Don't take it out. All right. Yeah. Now you can take it out. So that's the frustrating thing that I go through every time I go to the store and use my card. Ergo, that's why I started carrying cash. But besides that, so a second customer came in and basically I tried to swipe the card again. Nothing. So I'm thinking, okay, I might actually have to get a chip reader from Square because maybe they're not allowing me to swipe the card, which I didn't know. I thought they had to be set up to where the company didn't want you to do it. So that's the way they set it up. But that was not the case. Basically, when I went back into the Square app earlier today, I was going to try it with my card, which has a chip in it, just to see if it would work. Well, a little pop-up came up and said, would you like to allow this to use your microphone? And in my head, I'm thinking, I think I've seen that question before. And because of all you tinfoil hats out there, I actually started questioning myself. Normally, I let my phone, my computer, whatever, have every bit of information it wants because it makes my life more convenient. That's what I like. But no, you guys are rubbing off on me, and I put my tinfoil hat on, and I must have answered no to that question, even though the microphone is actually tied into the headphone jack. Because whenever you use a pair of earbuds with the microphone on it, that's the jack you go into. Ergo, it goes in and out. So I had to allow it to have access to my Square reader in order to read it. So I noticed it. I clicked yes. And every time something comes up, I'm just going to click yes without reading it whatsoever from here on out. Took my card, swiped it. Yeah. Boom. Done. So now my square card reader, what happens every once in a while is normally you'll get like a big update for an app on your phone and you've got to redo everything. And I mean, sometimes you got to log in. Other times you might have to, maybe the permissions have changed and you have to give it access. So these are just things to think about, especially if I use it so infrequently that I don't think about it until the time I need it. So it's not like something I pull out of my bag and test every week. I just don't. So anyways, there's my tip there. And Brad, I just have to say, I'm looking behind you right now, and this reminded me of something. You've got a picture. You moved the Star Wars picture over, which I'm kind of bummed about, but you've got Deadpool behind you pointing a finger this way, which is kind of cool. I'm not a big Deadpool fan, but there's a t-shirt out there that makes me laugh every time I see it. And it says something to the effect of, I'm sarcastic because punching people is frowned upon. So that's one of those things where, my wife will tell you that that's pretty much me. That's why I'm sarcastic. Anyways, I just thought that was kind of cool. But no, I like the background there. So anyways, that is my tip for the week. Now, let's take a quick break, and then we'll get into the subject matter that Brad has brought for us this week. Our show today is brought to you by Ninja, the remote monitoring and management solution. Help you become more efficient, more productive, and more profitable. With Ninja, you can have a faster fixed response time and offer preventative maintenance to your customers. Ninja understands what you need to run your business, which is why their RMM solution is integrated with tools you use every day. Ninja provides competitive pricing, patch management, antivirus, email, SMS alerting. You can be up and running quickly with minimum training time. That's what I like. You have team viewer integration for that remote support. It's one solution for managed and non-managed clients. Use it everywhere you need it. Network visibility inside the RMM. See what's going on. Easy to read dashboards. Again, another feature which it's got to be easy to read, because if I don't understand it, I'm not going to use it. A powerful device search where you can create custom queries and export the list to show your customers. Customers like to see what we're actually doing for them. They also have an executive style report showing important system metrics such as health score, software added or removed, hardware changes, and team viewer connections. We always love those things where a customer will go, I'm having a problem with such and such, and you tell them, what have you done? Have you changed anything? Oh, no, I haven't changed anything. But then you can go into these executive style reports and, oh, you actually deleted the program that you're trying to start up. Yeah. So it's good upfront information. Ninja is offering Podnutz a free 30-day trial, and when you decide to buy, a 10% discount. To take advantage of this offer, go to info.ninjamsp.com/Podnutz. Now, we're going to go into our main topic for today, and it is around templates. And I think I understood where Brad was coming from, but basically, Brad, why don't you tell us what processes and things that you're putting in place, and what are these templates that you're talking about creating for your customers?
So I had some downtime while I was waiting for some Windows updates the other day. So I was like, oh, I'm finally going to do this. And I sat down and I started working on something that's I should have been doing, and like everything else, for the past like 5 years. And here's what I want my customers to have. Like, this is what they should have to have, like, my job be done correctly, and for them to be safe, and business continuity to be a thing, and backup and security, all the things that you want your customers to have. So this is like my ideal stuff, and this is the checklist. And it would be great for an initial meeting with a customer. Hey, this is what we do. You got to have all this stuff, and you may not all have it all right away on day one, but this is the goal, and these are the things that you should have, and we're going to work towards that, and this is what we do. And so it's like it manages expectations. It tells them that we know what we're doing. It also helps them understand what, like, costs and things. And for an existing customer, it's something that you do on a regular basis. Hey, we've got our checklist we've been working on this for a while. This is where we're at. This is where we need to be. And then also I wanted to put in like aging. Like this is how old your router is. Your router's, we installed it on this date. So maybe next year we look at it and we go, well, that's not a problem. It's only 1 year old. But then 5 years from now we go, hey, your router's going to be 5 years old. Maybe we should start looking at that might be a problem. We should replace that. So I put all this stuff onto a sheet, and I've got like network hardware, which is, your router, switch. I put Wattbox in here, NAS, surveillance equipment, network security. A lot of customers in the smaller business space are just on, like, they just have a router. Like I have a restaurant client that I'm still kind of like onboarding, and they just have like Netgear residential routers as their gateway in a lot of places in their restaurants. And so that's on the list. Like, hey, do you know that your last tech guy just put in like a home router, and it's protecting your credit cards? It's not okay. You need something else. So like that kind of stuff. And then, do you have an RMM or not? And then backup, and then continuity strategy. Those are the kind of things that are on this list. I'm still kind of working on it. But then, and I was looking at it going like, if somebody's business, I had a customer's business shut down, and it made me think like, hey, this all seems real great for business continuity and backup. And if you lose all your business data, you're kind of hosed. But if your business shuts down, you still go home and your family's photos are important to you. So residential in some ways, like, so at least certain aspects of residential, while maybe the continuity isn't as mission critical as it is for business, but the data backup and security is in some ways more important for residential customers. So I could see adapting this list once I'm done with it to residential and going like, hey, this is like your life. Your business is your income, but your family photos and things like that are like literally your life. So you should follow these sets of practices, and I would adapt this to be a little bit more budget conscious, but also like capturing the backup and security aspects. And anyway, so this became like, I looked at this as a process. It's a template that helps you introduce a new customer and also maintain existing customers. And I'm going to start using this as an actual like process template going forward. So that was a project I was working on, and wanted to throw it your way and see what you thought.
Well, I'll tell you right off the top of my head, the number one thing I'm thinking about, and I know John will have some things to say about this too, but I'm thinking about it and I go, anything that we can do to keep our processes similar, because a lot of times when we do things and we don't have a template, we don't have it written down, we have it in our brain up here, and a lot of times we'll sit there and we'll think we're doing the same thing every time. But if we don't have something to follow, there's a lot of times we're just kind of making it up as we go. Hey, I forgot to do this. Let me go over there and do that. Oh, wait. Hey, would you like backup? Would you like backup or fries with that? Either way, we can. I'm confused. So I like it as far as creating something where you don't have to think about it. You've put it down on paper and you can look at it and go, I asked them every one of these questions. And now, let me ask this. Are there things on there where you go, if you, as a business, on the business side, if there's something here that you're not willing to do you have like mission critical things on there where you go, if you're not going to do this, you cannot be my customer? Have you thought about anything like that?
Yes. And I'm going to be entering that situation next week. I did Nextdoor is that app about where your neighbors report stuff to each other. I did some work for a neighbor, And he's got a really cool house and a really nice home theater. And he's got a cool rack, and I helped him with some internet stuff, right? So I did residential work. He also has a construction business. Looking at I've only heard the description of his business IT environment. Windows Server 2003, Windows XP computers, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, God.
And his house, which is like, the house is beautiful. The rack he has 2 side-by-side floor-to-ceiling racks with like gear and control 4 and automation systems and blah, blah, blah. It's nice. I go, is this, I have a hard time believing it's the same person making these decisions. Like, how do you, anyway, so he wants me to like, and he doesn't want me to replace the server. He wants me to just maintain the server. I'm like, dude, I've already told you, you have an old server running outdated Windows server operate. Anyway, so I have to go in there, and I know he's going to be resistant to my recommendation, which is get rid of your old ass server. Like, you just, because it's old. It's not a new Windows 2003 server, like where it was on the kind of tail end of the supported lifetime. It was probably purchased in the middle of the Windows 2003 server lifetime. So it's old hardware. The hard drives I know are failing from the symptoms he's describing to me. So, and they're not adequate for the amount of storage that they need. They're having to constantly delete files and to like free up space on this thing, like every day. Like every day they have to go back and find the oldest thing that they're working on and delete it and push it off to another place. And just like, you guys, you understand that storage is not expensive. Like, you need a new server. So just get a new server. Like, you can't operate like this anymore. You guys are crazy. And it keeps crashing on them all the time, and their whole operation shuts down while they reboot the server, and they spend all this time managing. And I told him, get a new server, and he said, yeah, but can you just fix it? No, I can't. Like, there's so many reasons why I can't fix this server. And he was like, okay, well, cool. When can you come down and we can like have a meeting and look at things and you can tell us what you can do with the server? I'm like, no, get rid of no. Anyway, so I'm either going to work with these guys or not, but I'm not going to like maintain a 10-year-old Windows 2003 server. Like, right. That would be a deal breaker to like way long, just because it's funny. I can't. Every time I think about these guys, I'm just like, oh God, guys. So, yeah, that would be a deal breaker. Do you really, really, really want to hang on to out of date operating systems and software and hardware that I recommend strongly you replace? That would be something where I'm like, well, hey, you know what? Great, go Mazel Tov, find somebody that wants to do that, because I don't.
Right.
So,
all right, John. Now, what types of things do you put in your? Do you have any documentation or anything like this where you do the same thing for your business customers, or maybe a plan that you've laid out over time where you go, hey, we're going to do this, this, and this over this 3-month period, and in 6 months we're going to do this? Or do you kind of make it up as you go?
What? Let's kind of break out, I think, 3 things that we're talking about. You know, documenting what already exists, documenting what needs to be done, and then documenting processes to do that. So one, the processes we document so that we don't put a server out and leave it open to web access for everybody on the internet and Google to search when it has private medical data on it or something like that. So we document those processes to make sure that our standards are locked down, or configuring a new router, so we have that process. We document what needs to be done, which I'm probably the poorest at, you know, because I think that's what a lot of guys like us drop the ball on. I think Bradford had a great example of, hey, your router's old or your router stinks and it needs replaced. You know, most people don't realize, or if you do the math, that's actually just a sales opportunity. So That's just money to be made. And then I think there's the documentation of what exists, the account that exists, the IP ranges, the documentation on what we have already, which I always go back to what I say, that's all about making my life easier. Because again, I always go back, if my life is easier because I have good documentation, it's going to be that much better for the customer. Because one, I can fix those problems faster, I can address issues that are going on, so on and so forth. Documenting what exists, I think, is the easiest thing to do. The problem with documenting what exists is if you want to add something to that documentation that doesn't already exist. So what I mean by that is, since I'm old and I've been doing this a long time, things have become much more complex now than they used to be. So now all my documentation is current, but now let's say I have to add VoIP, which is something that is recently popular and now it's become very popular. So now I have to go back, and instead of just being able to plug that in and having those sections appear in my old Google Docs, I have to go back and manually add those sections to my old Google Docs documents to add those to existing documentation. So that process is usually where people fail, is they don't add the new things to the old or existing documentation. Two, since we're already tracking what we know exists, most systems that I've used, that I've manually created, do a very poor job of pointing out opportunities, what Bradford was talking about. You know, this router is 3 years old. Here, I get a notification somewhere in my email or someplace that I now have an opportunity to, one, replace it because, one, it needs to, but two, make a sale. So, you know, really, if you want to do those things correctly, you got to rely on, I think, products that you need to pay for, unless you've got the skills to create your Google Sheets or Excel sheets or whatever magic that I don't have to make that happen. You know, the big one that everybody talks about is IT Glue is a great one. A lot of RMM platforms have basic tracking of this sort of thing, but really what you need is what's called a PSA platform, professional services automation, like Autotask or something like that. Other big ones are SI Portal, or DocuWiki is an open source one that you can host yourself or have hosted. The thing is, you know, and then you can even start with something like Informed IT from Matt Rainey, which is a great way to start your documentation. The big thing that going into this is it's a lot of work to get started. Meaning, like, if you start a PSA platform like Autotask, you know, you have a lot of setup and all that. So your payback is after you do that setup and you build your configuration, you build your templates and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, you gotta, you know, what's the investment for us? Meaning, as solo techs, you know, you got to balance that versus, you know, the reward from that. And then you get into some compliance needs. So I have to have documentation for compliance needs, you know, help desk, you know, what changes, and I got to start tracking all that. So one of the products I've been looking at is called siportal.com. And it's kind of like IT Glue, but it does a lot of the same things. But, you know, it breaks things down into a lot of different functions as far as, you know, accounts, lists, even things like services, contacts, individual PC users. But really where I think it excels, or what I like about it, is you create things that are called configuration objects, is what they call them. So then you can tie those to certain services. Those are the processes tied to the services to make things happen. So it kind of tries to close that complete circle that we were talking about. I haven't used it enough or demoed it enough to give it a thumbs up, but I think Bradford's question is excellent. And, you know, to sort of summarize, is I don't have a perfect answer. I don't have the silver bullet for that yet. I've looked at Autotask. I'm considering that too, but, you know, that's a huge time investment at the beginning. And a lot of the time, I think for a solo tech like me, there's just tons of stuff in there I'm not going to use. So.
Well, and I almost wonder too, can you, like what Brad is doing right now, you're creating a sheet that's basically going to give you things to follow along as you're onboarding a customer, as you're meeting with a customer in 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, and you're kind of checking these things off the list. If I look at,
and that's where I'm at now. I'm with you 100%. Right. You know, I have 4 Google Sheets that track different aspects of the company that are all interlinked, but, you know, they don't automatically generate a nice magical report and put stuff on my calendar and notify me by text and email. And, you know, there's a lot of work to be done. Do I want to reinvent the wheel? Meaning, do I want to spend the time, the investment to make those sheets do exactly what I want? Or do I just pay somebody $40 a month and they've already done it?
Gotcha. That's a good point. So, Brad, have you looked at notifications?
Well, the notification thing would be critical. And I don't have as many endpoints as John. So maybe when I get have more stuff to manage, I'll be like, oh my God, please just tell me what I need to do. Like I need things to just pop up in front of my face and tell me where to go. Right now, what I think is going to work well for what I'm doing, and I'm looking at the Google sheet that I'm creating. I have the item description, and then the date that it was installed, and then an age. There's a formula. Today minus refer to the date that was installed. So it tells you how old it is in years by dividing by month and day and years. And then expected lifespan field. So, and then an expected replacement date. And so then I can use some formatting to highlight something that's past its expected lifespan red, right? So assuming that I actually care about my customers enough to look at this once every 3 months, I can start seeing these things kind of pop up, go yellow, red. You know, yellow would be approaching expected lifespan, red would be past, green would be within, you know, so much time. And then I could, like, we can print this out and we can look at it and we can meet quarterly and look at this and go, hey, look, we got stuff to do. Or hey, you're totally golden, which will never happen. No one's ever going to score 100% on this chart because, one, nobody ever does, and two, why would I do that? Because I have to sell products and services. So like this, and because you could never do enough. Like, it's not like I'm being a shady salesperson, but is anyone, I think it was like months ago, we asked a question, is anyone 100%, any of your customers, pick one, 100% on compliance with HIPAA or whatever they're supposed to be? And then John was like, no. No. Nope. We try. Our efforts 100%, but it's just there's so much. So I could always bust this out and go, yeah, we got stuff to do. You want me to do it? All right, cool. Here's the invoice. Like that's
kind of what I like about the third-party products too. Is a lot of them have customer portals that the customers can log into, you know, or it creates really pretty reports for them to see. So if you want them to have some, like I have a couple of customers that are very proactive where they want to go in and put in everything, like, you know, the serial numbers off every monitor they have, you know, all that kind of stuff that I'm not interested in tracking. But, you know, and that's what like IT Glue and SI Portal and all that have a way for a customer to log in and see the status of all their stuff. Which I thought was pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, that's like Repair Shopper has an asset, and I like it, and I use it kinda. Like I do put assets in there, but and like you can customize the asset data, so you can, you know, put like I've got what OS is running on it, what kind of hard drive it has, whether it's an SS, you know, a solid state drive or a spinning drive, and what capacity it has. Like, there's stuff that I've modified for that, and I really like using that. Except, when I'm working when I have a customer, like they call me and they have an issue. More often than not, it might be a network thing where I'm dealing with multiple assets. So then, if let's say like the username and password that they use is something that I need to know, that asset in repair shopper, like, yeah, I can click into that, but then when I need to go to that computer over there, I've got to go back out and go over to there and then get that, and then it's too much. So what I use is, for every customer I have, and this is what John was saying, was like, for what you need to actually provide support to a customer, you've got pretty well really documented well, because you need it, like, to do your job. So I have a sheet for each customer that, like, it lists the IP address of everything on the network, basically, and then it kind of goes along sideways, like, hey, this is John's computer, this is his Windows username and his password and blah blah blah, and like everything I need to know about that computer, so that I have one place that I can just like leave that monitor on that thing, and then this monitor is accessing that computer and doing that stuff. So so this document's different, because so that one document is for like support cases, and then this document is for like planning and sort of thinking about bigger things.
You're talking about exactly what like SI Portal does. Like if you bring up a piece of gear, within that there's like a tab where you click on it and you can go to relationships. So if that gear is related to, I mean, you can take it as far as like even document what switch port the server or whatever is plugged into. You know, you can, and then notes on that device. So for example, if you look at their devices, they have a Blade server listed there. You know, it has the IP addresses of all the NIP cards. You can go to the username and password of that device, click on a tab and see what switch ports it's on, see a picture of the device, the serial number, the make, the model, you know, change tabs, things that have happened to that device. So yeah, you're on the exact same page I am, Bradford. It's just, I'm wondering if I'm spending too much time trying to build out what I'm doing manually when I could just, like I said, $40 a month and be done.
Now, John, though, there is still a certain amount of time that it's going to take you to set those things up to work the way you want them to work, correct?
Documentation is extremely time consuming no matter how you do it.
I
But
know.
I think Bradford would agree, and I think most techs, you know, if we asked Matt or B or any of the guys, the regulars on the show, they would say, man, you know, good documentation in the long run saves time, period.
Well, and here's one of the things that I look at, and one of the things I've struggled with, there is a lot of great people who've made documentation of one sort or another. And I try to get to a point where I would love to have a one page or maybe a front and back where it would have listed everything and keep it simplified. Here's the problem. A lot of people, this way I am, when I look at a document, if it doesn't read the way I like it to read, or the way that I can look at it and understand what I'm looking at, like if I have to retrain my brain to look at it, what some engineer or somebody that was making software thought that it would look good this way or work good this way, chances are I'm not going to use it. I have to have something that I can look at and go, yeah, I understand exactly what that says, and here's what we need to do. Or like Brad was talking about, have a sheet that I can, whatever, once a month, once every quarter, you know, I could put something in a reminder to either I go in and manually check these things where I look at them and pull X amount up, and then, you know, set up times to sit down with the customer, or, you know, send an email out or something like that. I'm with you guys. I don't think there's any super easy way to not only put this process together, but to maintain the process over time.
Well, I think if you can spend as much time trying to figure out what you want to do here as you actually would spend documenting. I mean, if you just go out and do some searches in Reddit, you know, Google searching, I mean, there's tons of products, tons of suggestions, tons of ways that people say you should be doing this. You know, I would suggest, if anything, you just start with something.
Right.
You know, if nothing else, I mean, I'll go back to Matt Rainey's stuff, Informed IT. That's just a great place to start. I mean, his sheets are what I would call the minimum of what you need, no matter what.
Right. Yeah. you know what's beautiful about anybody that makes those types of sheets on a Word doc or an Excel doc, if you know just a little bit about either one of those, how to manipulate them, you can go in there, you can adjust them, which I've done to both the Technical Computer Business Kit and Informed IT for Matt Rainey. I'm it's nice to be able to grab that document, adjust it to the way I want it, and simplify it if it needs to be simplified, or add to it if it needs to be added to. And I think when you're starting off, I think if you just start with something, at least the basics. I've been using the same work order for the last 7 years now. Same one I had in the beginning. I probably the first year or two, I might have made some adjustments when I ran into a couple issues, but it works. It's a one-page document, front and back, simple. Customer fills out a little portion at the top because I manually make my customers fill that out the first time, and flip it over and sign on the back. Real simple. I mean, easy to do. I print them out all the time. Not a big deal. And I'd love to have, I do have check sheets for doing things like, I don't know, virus removals. Do I pull them out? No. Would it be nice? Yes. Am I going to take that extra time? Probably not. But I do know that there's a lot of times where, because I will do the process manually or in my head, I will waste a lot of time. Now, like John was saying, though, you're going to waste time in the beginning, or you're going to waste the time during, or you're going to waste time afterwards. But at some point, you're going to waste that time. So you got to figure out, when can you go in? And I like what Brad's doing. Brad, you're thinking about the problem, and you're trying to solve a problem for yourself that will hopefully help you stay more consistent in communication with your customers over the long haul, versus just going, yeah, we probably should check that out. Now, going back to what you had said in the beginning, though, when you were talking about a router, number one, being a consumer router in a restaurant. Yes, bad. You were talking about, hey, maybe this router is 5 years old. Do you guys, and either one can answer this, or both of you separately, but do you guys have like a limit on gear when you say this needs to be replaced at such and such a time? Not 10 years down the road, not, whatever. Do you have a firm time set, or you just kind of go, hey, they're having problems, maybe this is something we need to look at?
I've had the reverse of the problem lately with 2 new clients that I've picked up, meaning I've had two new dental clients, which I inherited, which, I had the same thing that Bradford was talking about, mostly XP machines, Windows Server 2003, all this old stuff. And basically they said, well, we want all this done by July 1st, and that, which gave me about 90 days with each of them. The problem a lot of those clients don't realize is, one, I have no documentation on them. First time I've walked in there, speaking of documentation, and then they expect just everything to work. They just think that, like every other time, that we just run the CD and everything is just peachy keen and everything will work just like they want. What they don't realize is they're probably 3 or 4 versions behind on software. Most of their equipment is not going to work with the new operating systems, whether that's 64-bit Windows 7 or Windows 10. All of these things, that their X-ray machine probably is so old that it's not going to work with the new software. And hey, that's probably $20,000 to $40,000 for a new X-ray. Are you on board with that too as part of this, or do we have to work through some problems? That sort of thing. So, usually what I have to do, and I would call this strange compared to the normal, is, I got to pull back on the reins, which I said is, hey, we got to do this little by little by little, because, you still want to see patients and fix teeth. So let's kind of control this, and then I'll document it along the way. And if we run into anything along the way, we can address it then. So again, I think that's where very good documentation provides a huge payback, just to circle back to that.
Brad?
Yeah, so on the question of like router age,
or computers, printers, whatever.
Right, like having a max age. I don't.
Should be 3 years.
What I'm trying to build into this is like an expected lifespan. That's what an actual column that I'm building into this.
which would be 3
And
years.
well, if you pick your router right, 5 years, you probably get by. But
see, here's a problem, and I don't know. Okay, so I'm using a business grade router now, but every consumer router I've had, rate it about, and it doesn't matter. And I $200, $250, $300 routers. I'm not talking about $50 routers. Every one of them, right around year 4, I would have intermittent problems. And I would suffer for about a year before I'd finally said, you know what? I really need to replace this router. Now, had I replaced it year 3, it would have been business as usual, no downtime, unless, something just weird happened. But for the most part, it's just going to work. And I guess that's when I'm trying to talk to the customer and protect the customer. Here's the things that I want them to know. Here's the best time to do this, or we can do your plan. And when it fails, we'll take a look at it, but there's probably going to be some downtime and different things in there. So these are things I do think about every once in a while. And I don't know that there's a solid answer. I'm just going by, I know what I've suffered with, and I know what customers will literally go and turn their computer on, go make a pot of coffee, get a pot of coffee, put their cream and sugar in it, go sit back down, and the Windows screen will be popping up. And that is totally normal to them.
Yeah, my dad will do that. And I'm like, what are you doing? Your son is a freaking tech guy. Like, why would you tolerate that? Anyway, but yeah, so I have a theory, and it's not, I don't have enough scientific evidence to like support my theory yet, but
that's all right. We make stuff up on the show all the time.
No, literally my entire day is making up everything that I say. But my theory is that routers have been by market demands sort of just like compressed and compressed and compressed, like Superman turning a piece of charcoal into a diamond. Like a router is not a switch, and a router is not a modem. But most people's experience with a router includes a modem and a switch. And a router is also not a Wi-Fi device, but that's also thrown into the same box. So you've got 4 separate functions being performed by a single device. And now we need to make that the cheapest freaking thing on the planet. Like, everybody needs a router. Everybody needs all 4 of these things. And so let's make that super cheap. And you're like, and it's also the most important. It's like now you've got all of your eggs in one basket, and it's the most important basket to your network, and let's make it free. Literally free, because the ISPs will supply it. And you're like, no, that's a bad plan. But that's the plan that everybody's gone with. So routers, and then that's fine, because I like Time Warner and AT&T or whatever, they're going to supply that thing and whatever. But now what that does is cascade over into the market, like the actual market where people are buying things because they're going to buy their own stuff, and they're like, well, I could get this for free from AT&T. And so they're, let's say that just a router is $100, which I don't even know, aside from the Ubiquiti Edge router, which is actually pretty sweet, $50. It only routes. It's not a switch. It's not a Wi-Fi. It's just a router, and it's not user friendly. You have to understand networking to set it up, but it's only $50, and it lets you do whatever you want as a network administrator. It's a pretty sweet device. And it also has a pretty good VPN setup. So if you want to use a third party, John, you recommended, what's it called?
My Digital Shield?
Yeah, that one. They do support that router. So if you want to get the Ubiquiti Edge Router X, $50, you could set it up. It's pretty nice device, actually. I'm starting to think about using it as a template. with combining it with my Digital Shield, because it doesn't have the stateful stuff that like a Sonic Wall might have with the subscription. But anyway, separate router, separate Wi-Fi, separate switch, and you might get a little bit more lifespan out of your devices, and sort of like look at, hey, do we need to upgrade the switching capability, or do we need to upgrade the Wi-Fi capability, or do we need to upgrade the router and the UTM? Like, you break those things out. But when you try to throw them onto a box, like one magic box for the lowest possible price, yeah, something's going to go. Of course, the thing's not going to last very long.
You know,
Anyway.
it's funny you say that, because that's exactly what happens. It's either the Wi-Fi or it's the Ethernet ports, or it's never the whole thing all at one time. You start having problems. And that's a good, I believe in your theory. And
well, you've proven it, Jeff.
Yeah.
Just based on your experience switching from your home gear to your business gear.
Exactly. Yeah. I was totally against, again, I was one of the guys in the 90s. Yes, the 90s. Where I basically had my stereo equipment was all separate. I had my cassette deck. Yeah, for you kids that don't know, it was a dual cassette deck of all things. My CD player, yeah, played one CD. It wasn't even a rack. Had my tuner, so I could listen to the radio. I had my amplifier, because that was separate. That's where all the power was coming in. 100 watts per channel. I had all this stuff, right? And it looked cool in a rack, and the lights would blink and everything. And then I got to the point where I had big towering speakers. I said, you know what? Enough is enough. I went down to a little inexpensive unit that basically would move my sound from point A, TV, DVR, DVD, whatever, to the speakers, which were little satellite speakers that I kind of put around the room. And that was fine. So I had kind of went the same way, where I almost liked the routers with all this stuff in there. In my mind, my thinking at the time was, yes, I am old. My thinking at the time was, oh, this is cool. Everything's in one box. I only have to maintain this. But now I am seeing the significance of having separated things, where now I can put my Wi-Fi, my access point, up wherever I want it. I don't have to sit it on my desk. Then my router can sit on my desk where I can see it, instead of hidden under my desk or wherever, or hanging on the wall behind my monitors. I've tried all types of different things. The other nice thing too is with the business grade stuff, is mine will shut off and actually reboot on Sunday night at about 2 a.m. And so I never have to remember to do it manually. And again, I'm talking about automation. Therefore, my signal is like rock solid 99.99% of the time. So I do like that. So I believe what you're saying, Brad. It's good to get all that stuff out of a box, because you think about it, each of those components creates a lot of heat in itself for what it does.
Yep. And then you got to replace, like, basically completely replace your entire network to fix Wi-Fi or whatever the one thing is.
Exactly. Yep. All right. Well, I think we've covered a lot in this. Is there anything that we left out that we want to talk about as template? I think templates are a good idea. Brad, keep us apprised on what you're putting together. John, I know we'll be talking about this in the future, I'm sure. I love documentation. I just hate creating it. In the documentation I've created, I love it and use it for a long time. But everybody's going to be a little bit different, and everybody's got to kind of figure out what works for them. And I also agree with what Brad said earlier, that when you're starting out, or in John too, you can start off very basic and simple and just start and build on that platform. You can always change the things that you need to change in your documentation as you grow. But the problem is, if you don't start in the beginning and you grow, and then the next thing you're looking around trying to figure out how you're going to document all this stuff, that's going to take you a lot more time than if you had started in the beginning a little bit at a time. Anything else we need to cover?
No, that was, I'm just working on filling this thing out and finding, like, I'm basically going to have a Google Sheet that's for live support and a Google Sheet that's for planning and review and stuff.
Okay.
So those will be my two.
Hopefully you'll share those when you put them together.
Yeah,
or,
no.
sell them
Well,
or
when I get a Google Sheet template together, for both of these and like review, I'll send it out, and we can put because I have one folder in my Google Drive that's a public. It's almost like my Dropbox kind of folder. So
okay, yep,
I'll share that link with you guys, and we can put it in the show notes.
Cool, that will work. John, anything else?
No, that's solid. Great topic.
Cool. All right, let's take another quick break, and we'll get into our last section. DC Unconvention 2017 in Washington, D.C., September 16th and 17th. IT conference for techs and business owners, reimagined. Learn from fellow techs and business owners, get business strategies to work in the real world. Discover new tech. If you're an owner, operator in managed services, IT consulting, or a break-fix tech, which everybody's all three, but this is the place for you. Get your hotel and tickets now. Only 100 tickets are available. Go to unconvention.io. Sorry, I don't know.
You have to.
I know. It's what I do. Just point out the obvious. No, anyways, yep, that's coming up quicker than you know. So definitely get your hotel rooms, get your transportation, whatever you're gonna do, fly, drive, run, whatever. Get there and get your tickets so that you can be a part of this. Only 100 people. That's a lot of mingling and back and forth that you can do, and that makes it a lot nicer than maybe even some of these big conferences where you don't get a chance to talk to the people you want to talk to. At 100 people, you pretty much get a chance to talk to anybody that you want to. So that's cool. So definitely check that out. All right, let's answer some emails and take some calls. Phone lines are open. The call-in number is 1-888-697-0162. All right, John, I think there was a question that was in the chat room, I think, a little bit earlier. You remember what it was?
Yeah, we've been going back and forth on it there. Let's see. Let me scroll up here and I'll find it.
Something about all I read was a magic wand over the computer and showing that 100 volts was going, messing with the Ethernet cable. And I'm like going.
Well, this is from Jerry in the chat, and he says
Okay.
he has a customer that was having some internet trouble on one computer attached to Spectrum/Time Warner. He reported extremely slow internet connectivity. He called Spectrum tech support, and they can tell. They came in and said, "Well, it's your on-premise wiring. It's your internal wiring." Jerry goes on to admit that this could be plausible. Definitely could be a problem. And then I guess the customer called Spectrum back, and they sent out a guy with a wand that he waved over the computer. And he says, "Oh, your computer is defective. This meter shows you are sending 100 volts back to the modem through the Ethernet cable."
100 volts. Okay, I'm sorry. To anybody that understands basic electronics, 100 volts. Really?
Yeah, so that's kind of where this has been. Now we have a lot of wand jokes in the chat, if you can imagine that. But
of course.
Yeah, that's a little bit ridiculous. But, back and forth, Jerry said he tried some things. And then I suggested, well, try a different patch cable, try a different port on the router or switch. Try a different NIC card, check the power to the computer. And Bradford had a great story. I think it was a power cable story where he switched out the power cable and it's solved all his problems. If we do think that, or plug it into a different outlet.
That actually update to that story. It ended up being the power supply on the computer. I'm not sure. Okay. Yeah, but that was one of those weird intermittent things that took 6 months to figure out. That was great.
Now, and Gary says he's taken this PC back to his place and has ran it for a full day and all that without any issues. So which would maybe lead us to believe that we do have something going on site.
It could be, or, and here's the other thing too. And this is one thing I kind of forget about sometimes. When somebody drops off a computer or I pick it up, I don't normally take the power cable with me. So that's one of the things that I kind of look at because I already have them hooked up in my office. I just bring it in, plug it in, boom. And I don't think about it when it goes back that they're using that same power cable a lot of times. And so, that's definitely something to look at. Because I know I've forgotten it in the past.
Wand, but I said, well, I go to that site all the time, but
magic wand.
No, I want to know I want the Amazon link for the magic wand because I need that for my business.
Yeah. I want to wave it over a computer and go, yes, your computer's defective because it's sending X amount of volts.
100 volts.
Yeah. Through the Ethernet cable. I'm sorry.
Jerry did say that Spectrum did say the power supply, but I think we got to go through a little process of removing what we think could be the problem. Try the cable, try that power supply last.
Now, power supplies, I mean, depending on the model, depending on what type, if it's a regular size computer, power supplies are so inexpensive that I would probably take at least a cheap one.
Well, I think the easiest thing to start with is get a brand new patch cable, run it from the computer, put it in a different port on whatever product you're using, even swap it with one if you don't have a free one.
Right.
And because, you know how offices are, that thing could be cable tied so tight that it's, going numb, or it could have been run over with a chair, or, JD saying that maybe running through some older gear, like a surge protector or a battery backup that's screwing it up. So
now that I would find almost more plausible. Now, again, these technicians and engineers, well, we're talking about a tech from Spectrum, but really I've had high-end engineers that have come out when I was having an internet problem, and they were swearing up and down. The techs that were up in the office nowadays, that used to be ground techs, they were swearing up, well, back in the day, it's not back in the day. This is not old wiring. But they would sit there and go, oh, it was always a grounding issue. Always. Really? My house was built in 2003. Okay. Not saying that it maybe could have been not grounded properly, but I doubt it. And they grounded it in so many different ways, and it still didn't fix the problem. And they still to this day still couldn't figure it out. So that's why I'm Comcasting now, because I had to switch. Don't even get started on I went over my data cap. I'm waiting for them to. I haven't seen the bill yet, but I'm waiting. I think it's like an extra $60, and I am going to call and complain. That's ridiculous. Yes, I use over a terabyte. So what? Anyways,
business service. We've talked about this.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things. I know it's on my list, John. It is on my list. I've thought about it. I need to make a phone call. I'm waiting for the right time.
My list. Yeah.
Story of my life, right? All right. So let's go ahead and go into another email. This email is from Cormac O'Donohue he's over the pond. All right. So let's see. It says, hey, Jeff, hope all is good. Just wondering, are any of you testing Malwarebytes TechBench? I've just started testing it, and it's a handy tool. Thanks. Well, Cormac, I have been playing around with it a little bit here and there. I mean, they're constantly improving it, doing things that we needed to do, obviously. But to be honest, there's other tools that kind of do everything that I needed to do right now. So I usually fall back on those tools. But when I do have time, I do play around with it and see what the improvements they make and all that kind of stuff. And it does seem pretty handy as far as the tool, and it does the basic things that you need to do for a lot of what we do.
Well, I'm going to suggest, if I might, that we all just be a little bit patient until the Unconvention. Since they are a major sponsor at the Unconvention, I have a funny feeling that we're going to get exposed to a lot of the new stuff they have now, what's coming, and all that sort of thing. And I think we'll be able to report back mid-September when we get back from that on what's going on and how we feel about it with a little bit more knowledge.
Yep. Yeah. So definitely. I think you can still sign up for the beta program. I believe it's a beta. And you just have to contact Malwarebytes. But yeah, you guys can do that. We have a couple contacts over there if you need them. But yeah, definitely check it out. I always enjoy working with new tools just to see what they're doing, just to see if there's any way to improve my process. It's just time being what it is. It's not something I can do all the time. But Brad, how about you?
For Malwarebytes, I mean, we should. I haven't even looked at it, honestly.
Okay.
Right. It sounds cool though. Like a one-stop shop. I like to have Malwarebytes as a pre-install. This is sort of like an old, from 10 years ago thing where if certain malware infections would know the name of Malwarebytes, and so they'd block the installation of it. So I like to kind of like have it pre-installed, even if it needs an update when I need to run it on a computer.
Okay.
I like to have it there. So it's like, well, their malware protection's already sitting there. Let's see what their tech bench stuff is all about. But I haven't really looked at it yet. I do want to have. I'm not really like a first early adopter, first generation kind of guy. I'm like, let's see what you got and how you failed the first time and what you learned from it and figured it out, and then I'll come and take a look at your second iteration kind of a guy.
I see. So you let everybody else be the guinea pigs. So we've got to go through the pain and suffering while you just sit back and go, oh, hey, it's ready now? Cool.
Yeah. No, you get me. That's good.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I know a lot of us do like the shiny new tech things, and we jump in and go, oh, let's see.
Well, that kind of have me interested because they're supposed to have that new corporate endpoint protection that's all cloud-based.
Yep. Matter of fact, there's a webinar for that coming up, I believe, here shortly. So,
as in tonight?
I don't know. Is it tonight?
I don't know.
I got an email and I can't remember exactly when it was, but I think there was a couple different times and dates that they had on there where they were doing a webinar to talk about the corporate endpoint protection. Cormac, I hope that that answers your question in a long-winded way, but yeah, definitely check it out and keep us apprised of what it's doing for you and the things that you like about it. And we can sit there and talk about it on the show. All right. Speaking of, so this is from Christian Garcia. And speaking of routers, this is a question about a router. It says, hi, Jeff. I'm contacting you because I'm having router problems. I have a Netgear AC1900 R7000. Wow. That's a mouthful.
I don't know what that is.
And it keeps on disconnecting from any host connected to it. I'm paying for 300 megabytes down and 20 up. And I know real world wireless speed should be around 150 down, but I'm nowhere near that. The most I'm getting is 90 down and 15 up. I remember hearing in a past episode that you were also having router problems and that you got a business grade router and it made a huge difference. May you tell which router is the one you got? Do you also recommend a different make and model of router other than the one you got? So I had sent an email back to Christian and said that, yes, I'm using the Arachnus router, the Arachnus AP, and Arachnus switches. I think I only have one Linksys switch left on my network. So full managed switches, all that kind of stuff, even though it's overkill for my office, but I'm learning some things with networking. So now, as far as wireless, unless it's intermittent, actually 90 down and 15 up, depending on where you're at, is still pretty good for wireless. So I'm not sure if that's a problem.
This specific router,
yes,
ironic, just conveniently, in the last 2 weeks, I have had to replace one of these, this exact model, for failing to connect new Wi-Fi devices. And some network speed issues on Wi-Fi specifically. So I just replaced the router because I didn't want to deal with it anymore, and it was at one of the restaurants, so we kind of like redid their network. But the complaint leading into the job, and it's literally this exact router, was new Wi-Fi devices wouldn't connect, and I was having all kinds of issues with some other Wi-Fi devices on that network having stuff that was basically speed limited issues that we couldn't really figure out until we replaced the router and the Wi-Fi system, and boom.
Nice.
So that router seems to have a Wi-Fi, like both allowing new devices to get DHCP network IP addresses and limiting speed and like having buffering issues and stuff. So if someone's having an issue with Wi-Fi with that specific Netgear router, I would just replace it, because that's what I did.
And that fixed the problem. There you go.
Yep. And immediately everything started working again. So
problem solved. Yeah, John, do you have any other recommendations besides the Arachnus stuff? As far as even consumer,
that's the way to go for small business. Period. I mean, it's priced right. It's solid. It's well supported. I mean, it's got a lot of nice features for the price. VPN, VLANing, if you need all that kind of stuff, you can do all that with that. Now, it's not a UTM device, meaning no IPD or IPS or all that fancy stuff that we've talked about in the past. But yeah, it's a great small business router.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. And again, we talked about this a little earlier in the show, where having the separate devices actually, in my opinion, makes a great difference as far as just convenience of placement and how it works. So definitely check that out. Yeah, as far as the consumer side, I pretty much, after I started using this business class stuff, which to be honest with you is not much more expensive than, if at all, of what I was spending before anyways. Usually, if you become a reseller and stuff, you can get it pretty close to the price. And if Brad is right with his theory, you might be able to get more than 3 years out of this device.
Since when has Brad been wrong?
Well, that's true. So it might be
never, absolutely never.
So it might, yeah. So if you can get a couple extra years out, and we'll see what happens. As long as it works. But here's the other nice thing too. Once you have it in place, let's say only one, either the router or the AP fail, you can just replace those without upsetting your whole network and having to redo the whole thing, which is nice. And if you're sticking with the same router, hopefully, then a lot of times if you back up your config files, you can just kind of go and put all your settings back in there. Especially when you've made
we back up our config files. It's part
of
our documentation.
Yes.
Always back up config files. That's what I never not back up config files.
It's insulting that you would say that, Jeff.
Well, when I first set up the Arachnus router here and made some changes, which hosed everything for some reason, yeah, I forgot to make a backup of my config file. So I spent the next half hour going back in and reprogramming everything. Oh boy. Anyways. So Christian, I hope that I'm glad we brought up the email with Brad on the show. So as far as consumer grade routers, I don't have any recommendations anymore. To be honest with you, I was guilty of this. I don't think as IT providers that we should actually be putting in consumer routers. And I'll even say this, long term, I would even say residential. Yes, it costs a little bit more, but do you want service that works well, or do you want service that at some point is not going to work well? And usually a lot sooner than later. I'm sorry, Brad. What were you going to say?
Customer takes credit cards that you cannot put in a home-based router.
Yeah. There you go.
I was going to say, if you're looking for literally for residential use, the Asus line of routers are pretty freaking awesome. Like, they're almost good enough that I would consider using them for business. You know what I mean? Like, they have strong Wi-Fi. I haven't ever had, when you hear about different brands of routers having a leak of some kind of a security issue, it's usually not Asus because they write their own firmware and apparently they don't screw it up. They come from a family line of gaming, so they want high performance. So when they dumb it down, they're coming from a pretty good place. And so they're budget routers that are like $100. For example, the Asus RT AC66U, it's $99. It's a pretty good router. So for a house, I would and you're not using it for business use, I would highly recommend that specific router, and even a higher grade. Asus routers are for home, for residential, fantastic.
Okay.
So
good.
And very, very strong Wi-Fi.
Nice. If
you're not trying to mesh it, like if you need to cover a bigger zone and you need more than one access point, then you're gonna have to do something like Open Mesh or Ubiquiti or something. But just for routing capability, totally very highly recommend Asus routers.
Awesome.
And I'd second that on their network cards too.
Okay.
I've standardized on their wireless cards and all that for if I need to add in something.
Nice. Now, John, is when that something's breaking down, or just
maybe if I got to toss a wireless card into an Optiplex or something like that I didn't get one out of the box. And sometimes I'm even not getting a wireless card from Dell, and I'm putting in the Asus cards afterward if I need them.
Okay.
Just because I find the drivers are a lot better and they're much more compatible, and I'm getting a lot better speed with the Asus cards than I am from anything else that I've tried.
Okay. Awesome. That is good to know. Very good. All right. I think that was our last email. And yeah. So I think we are on our way out. And Brad, I would like to ask you, can you give us one parting thought and let people know where they can find your awesomeness?
Parting thought. No, I have a customer that never works on the weekends, but apparently this weekend they are, and they're having an issue with their NAS, and so I'm trying to troubleshoot that. So my brain's broken at the moment because I can't figure out why it's not online. But you can find me at Google Plus at Brad at ttcscomputerservices.com. My website is the same, ttcscomputerservices.com, and it was a pleasure being here this weekend. Thank you.
Well, it was nice to have you, and thanks for bringing the topic too. Really appreciate that. Makes my life simpler.
Always try.
It's all about making your life simpler, Jeff.
That's right. It's all about me. That's what I try to tell my wife, and she doesn't buy into it. All right, John.
Well, I'll add to that then. If a man does his best, what else is there, Jeff?
There you go. That's all you can do.
Me at mavengroup.net, and we can thank General George Patton for the quote.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Appreciate everyone coming out and sharing. And John, as always, great add-ins to the subject matter and what we talked about. All right. Come join us live for the Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnutz.com/Computer Repair Podcast Live. Join in on conversation by calling in live and hanging out in the chat room. You can also send an email to podnutz@podnutz.com or leave a voicemail at 1-888-697-0162. Yes, the same call-in number is also our voicemail number. We have audio available over at podnutz.com or subscribe using your favorite podcatcher. You can be notified when the show is live by subscribing to our YouTube channel, Computer Repair Podcast. I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast.